Okay, we have the green bars, we have the live counter sticking up, so we should now be live, which of course means welcome back to the Storytime Network. You might notice it's not actually Contraband Police yet. That's because Steam was really seriously fucking up as I was trying to start Contraband Police. Me thinking Contraband Police might be the issue, I uninstalled it. Turned out it was just Steam overall that was being the fuck up. So now I'm reinstalling it.
Hello, I'm eating soup.
And Fuzzy's eating soup.
It's good soup. Uh, Also, I microwaved it for 38 seconds. You may now point and laugh.
I mean, I I don't know if I can point and laugh at you when one of the last times I used a microwave, it was to cook bacon.
No.
I didn't have like an oven or a grill.
You didn't have a stove?
I have I had a stove. It stopped working at one point. I had to buy like a plug-in induction hob. I think the stove was still working at the time, but I've never been a huge fan of like frying things in a frying pan. I did do it quite a bit in that place because of the lack of an oven or grill, and it meant a lot of cleanup in the end. Oil spat everywhere.
Mm, yeah, frying does tend to do that.
Not to mention, like I was using it to cook bacon because I wanted to pick me up because this was my third year of uni and I was doing an
Mm.
all nighter of an essay and I was basically like treating myself. I went through like a pack of bacon on that essay.
You know, I cannot necessarily relate to that in the sense that when I'm doing an essay, I cannot eat at the same time. Like I can't do anything at the same time. Like
Mm,
my brain just doesn't can't do that.
yeah.
Uh, but I do understand the whole treating yourself principle.
Trying to think, it was either an essay or like another piece of assessed work, and if it was the essay, I did really well on it. If it was the other piece of assessed work, I didn't do great on it. I, it might have
It's
been
usually the
both.
opposite.
It might have been both, to be honest. I might have done that twice.
It's usually the opposite for me.
Hmm.
I do very poorly on essays.
I
So, okay,
I fucking loved
go ahead.
essays. I loved essays. I was so good at them.
I we our mental illnesses are in very different places. I think because, like, okay, I never formally learned how to do university level essays until last semester,
Hmm.
and my experience last semester was not great.
Hmm.
So here's how it went. I had a course with a great professor whose evaluation was two essays, each worth 50% of the grade.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, look, is it mildly unhinged as an evaluation method? Yes.
It's
Was
not.
I okay with it? Yes.
Hmm. It's not the worst evaluation method I've had. You tell your story, and I will get into mine.
Mm. So I basically, with essays, right, I would fly by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
And so I flew by the seat of my pants and got a 74 on the essay, which obviously I was not happy with. So I talked to the professor, not to complain about my grade, but to ask
Mm.
him where I could improve.
Yeah.
And he was like, so he was nice enough to bump the grade up to 77
Mm-hmm.
after we spoke. Just because he like looked through the essay again and was like, okay, I can see some there's some value here.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, yeah, go to writing services and like they'll teach you how to do essays. And I was like, they do that?
Mm.
because no one advertises writing services at my university. I don't know if that's a general thing. So I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Went to writing services, had a number of very illuminating sessions, followed the instructions of my writing services instructor to the letter.
Mm-hmm.
My second essay, which I did that for, got an 80. So after putting in like it's the greatest fear of people of the it's the greatest fear of the gifted child, where when you are not necessarily trying your hardest, you can at least tell yourself, well, I got a bad grade because I didn't try.
Mm.
So to try your hardest and only get a 3-mark improvement is a bit soul crushing. So yes, that was my story of learning that I'm not good at essays, even
So
when I try my hardest.
yeah. So I'll actually talk about my experience with essays first. So I don't know. Well, first of all, there's a definite difference in how the grades work because from what you were saying, the likes of 70, 74, 77, and 80 are not good.
Well, 77's an A minus and 80 is an A, I think.
And you're upset with those?
I lost 20 marks.
Yeah, but you still got an A. Like, you got an A. That's good. Assuming you do pluses and minuses, the only thing higher is an A plus.
I mean, yeah.
Then what's wrong with that? Who gives a shit if you lost 20 marks? You got an A.
I think this is one of those things where my mental illness is showing.
Because,
Because I'm pretty sure the grading system is, in fact, the same at the
well,
university level.
for me, it's like 70% and above is a first. So like the highest grade, and then 60 to 69 or 60 to 70 is 2-1, and so on and so forth. So most of the grades you will get are somewhere between like 40 and 70 something percent. I think the highest I ever got was a 77. And I was very much like, okay, as long as it's over 70, I don't really give a shit how far over 70 it is. A 70 counts. They're not going to look at the percentages on my fucking piece of paper that I have to, hand to employers or anything. Like, they're just going to look at the actual grade I got.
I think in my case, I'm a bit more concerned about because we do GPAs here in Canada.
Right, we did not do that.
Yeah, okay, that might be the difference maker then. Because we do GPAs in Canada, and GPAs are in fact calculated by the
Right, right. So it's the
up
colonies
to
being
half.
dumb again. Great, okay.
Well, in my case, I would normally not care about the GPA, but the GPA is something that affects what master's programs you can get into.
Mm, mm, mm. I still say
So
I still say GPAs are dumb.
they are. They very much are. They're not a good, especially when they're cumulative like that.
Mm,
If you're like me and you're a bit of a late bloomer who didn't
mhm.
start getting good grades until like third or fourth year of university, you're boned.
Yeah.
Uh, like I've consistently received A's in most of my courses over the past like 2 or 3 semesters,
Yeah.
and my GPA is still sitting at a 2.7
Mm.
out of like 4.2.
I mean, let me just get my university transcript out. Where is it? There it is. It was nearby, so I might as well. So, my first year, out of the 6 modules that I did, I only got one that was over 70 and therefore a first. Second year, I got up to 3 over 70, so 3 firsts, and then final year I only had one that was under 70. So there's you can definitely see the progress, so to speak, and part of that was because it helped certainly for. So there was one lecturer where I had a module with him every single year. So basically, I was getting feedback on what he liked from his essays every year.
Yeah, that is a big factor as well. The human factor is not to be underestimated.
So I got feedback, first year, and I worked on it. I got feedback in the second year, and I went, okay, here's what I need to do. And then for that final year, especially considering, so the feedback for the second year, we'd had to do an essay about that had primary sources involved, and I didn't use them anywhere near enough, and I obviously got called up on that by the lecturer, and so for the third year essay, where again primary sources were important, I went, okay, I know what I need to do here now because I've got this feedback. Primary sources all over the fucking place. And yeah, it fucking worked. I ended up getting a fucking 75 in that, which is really good. It also helped that, again, another lecturer where I had him basically once a year, I realized that not only did I like him as a lecturing style, I also realized that he quite liked my writing style. I picked his fucking module for third year, and I got a 76 in that one. The 75 in Interpreting Conflict in Post-Colonial Africa, no fucking idea how that one happened. I think that was the bacon-fueled essay, actually.
I have heard many things about the sheer power of bacon. But
oh yeah,
it's one of.
I was going to go into the wild assessment method. So it was actually for one of the lecturers I mentioned, who consistently so we had basically two forms of assessment a module, and this guy on his modules consistently would have one essay. I think there may have been an exam one time, which actually might have been the third year one that we didn't end up even doing because of COVID. Not properly anyway. But as the other assessment method, it was always a series of 3 fucking multiple choice quizzes that you could literally sit there, have the fucking articles and books you need for it open, and just control F your way through it, or just have somebody, or just work as a group and do it. And he knew we did this. And he didn't give a shit. So we were always like, yeah, he just doesn't want to mark more than one essay a fucking semester, does he? He clearly just wants to mark one set of essays a semester, and that's it. He does not want to have to do 2 of them.
That is perfectly respectable.
But yeah,
and encouraged even.
Somebody actually went to him and said, "You do know this is happening, right?" And he went, "Yeah." So it's fine. Don't worry about it. You just do your work.
I won't tell anyone if you don't. Sort of deal.
I think so. I don't know. But it's just very funny. They just didn't give a shit. We were all essentially cheating on this.
Look, it's not cheating if you don't narc.
But yeah, he was probably my favorite lecturer for my undergraduate degree, because he was also like the war historian, basically.
So I know what you mean by that, but when you say it like that, it sounds a lot cooler than it is.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, he did the module where so first year the module I had for him, it was a group project that we did. My group did about Jack the Ripper, and I got to talk about that crazy lady who thought Jack the Ripper was an ape. So I liked him from there.
did you not? Did you not talk about the theory that Jack the Ripper was Mahatma Gandhi?
No, that was a
Have you
theory.
heard of that theory?
No.
Yes, because he was in England around the time of the killings.
Oh God, I would have had to find evidence, like somebody at the time actually saying that. Hey, it's ready. But if I could have found that, I absolutely would have.
Because, like, is it likely? No, not even remotely. Is it delightfully unhinged? Oh, 100%.
Let me just.
I would love for that to have been the case, for many reasons. But it's like it. Well, no, so here's the thing. I believe that he was not Jack the Ripper, obviously. But, and nor would I have liked him to be Jack the Ripper because I don't really have any personal problems with Gandhi. That said, it would be kind of funny though, wouldn't it?
No, I'm sticking to the theory that Jack the Ripper was a giant ape.
No, that's probably the most likely conclusion. Yes,
that's fucking hilarious to me. That's so fucking hilarious to me that this woman actually wrote about that. And that somebody obviously found that, stupid and hilarious enough to fucking save that letter and talk about it when somebody came asking.
Which, again, like, it's probably not impossible.
I think it is. No, I think it is. I don't see any way that it could possibly be a giant ape.
What if the ape had... So, okay. Follow me here. God. The ape had a genetic mutation that somehow gave it genius-level intellect by ape and human standards. And it proceeded to be raised by a physician. And that physician was someone with a deep-seated fear of women. And he projected that onto the ape and taught it all sorts of fricked up values. And as a result, the ape grew up hating sex workers because of his adoptive father, who also was a doctor who taught him medical knowledge.
No, I don't see that as being very likely, personally.
Unlikely, yes. But technically speaking, it's not impossible.
It's not impossible, but yeah,
in the same way that you could theoretically, you can flip a coin. Did you know that this is one of the most fricked up things about probability? Theoretically, You can flip a coin an infinite number of times and have it land on heads every single time.
Again, possible, just incredibly unlikely.
Oh, you cannot begin to comprehend how unlikely. Now, uh, we, uh, I, I have some beef, or not beef, but I have some things I need to talk to you about specifically because you brought up something very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have very different cooking and eating and meal habits, I think.
Yeah.
So, for everyone listening, we were talking about microwaves and microwaving before, and Mill said he hadn't microwaved anything in a long time, and I was like, "Well, what about your leftovers?" To which Mill responded,
I almost never have any leftovers.
and I'm like, "Oh, I kind of forget sometimes that not all families are like mine, where we basically just cook big batches once a week of like a bunch of different things, and then just eat that throughout the week." It's like, it's
Yeah.
like meal prep, textbook meal
Mm.
prep, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that I
Oh.
kind of forget sometimes that that's not a universal thing. Because like you can understand where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah.
Like meal prepping is very much one of those things that is increasingly common in the modern day, I think. Just by necessity.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those things that you just it doesn't occur to you a lot of the time that it's something if you meal prep, it it's it kind of can not occur to you that other people might not meal prep.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely been a learning experience in my case, but yes, meal prepping aside, I do have a segue for the probability thing.
That's right. Sorry. Somebody tried to get through the border with some contraband, eh? And then tried to run away.
Was it up their butt?
No, it was in that car. Go on, buddy.
Does this game have that?
No. You do not get to perform a cavity search, no.
That would be a very different genre of game, I believe.
Yeah.
Uh, well, so I don't know how to introduce this topic in a sort of gentle and mild fashion.
Hmm.
So I think we're just gonna raw dog it.
Okay.
Death.
Okay. Anything else?
And what happens after you die?
Oh boy.
So I have been thinking of something that is on a like purely like okay, so I should preface this by saying I am in fact an individual of the religious persuasion. However, I am not uh going to speak about this from a religious point of view at all. So you don't have to worry about me like projecting those beliefs if that makes you uncomfortable.
Okay.
Because I'm not talking about the religious side of things at all. What I want to talk about is this from the perspective of a purely scientific view on consciousness.
Right.
So
One
let
second.
us.
Fat lot of good you work, Constable Repnin. Sorry. He let the guy
So
get away. I had to
yes,
chastise him.
yes, of course.
He had alcohol.
So let us presume that there's no such thing as like the soul.
Okay.
And that consciousness and being and self and all that, let us presume that this is a purely physical phenomenon. Whereby just the way the atoms are arranged in your body and brain are what make you you.
Okay.
You're following me so far, right?
Yeah.
So, if we are presuming on this basis, what do you know about the heat death of the universe?
Not much. Other than it exists.
So, like, are you familiar with the, and I wrote about this recently, are you familiar with the concept that after the universe undergoes heat death, it might just, after a long enough period of time, it could just spontaneously restart?
Yes. Thanks to Futurama.
Right. And that was a plot point in that. So, that being the case, this will happen a theoretically infinite number of times.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The universe starts, resets over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Ad nauseum. So, knowing that this is the case, and assuming that consciousness is a purely physical phenomenon. Can you see where I'm going with this?
Not especially.
So let's assume consciousness, you being aware of yourself, is a purely physical phenomenon that is just made up of, like, it consists of the way the atoms are arranged in your brain.
Right.
And that because of that, the way that because of the way the atoms work out, that's what makes you self-aware
Right.
and you. So if the universe recurs often enough, then your consciousness will also recur.
Okay.
And given that consciousness and memory, if they are purely physical outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
it is entirely possible that your brain will just happen to be arranged in such a way that it will have, because memory is also a product of how the atoms in your brain are arranged. Yes?
Right.
So, if the universe recurs enough, not only could you theoretically your consciousness reemerge, but your consciousness could reemerge with a copy of, or with an imitation of memories from a previous life.
Right. And your point is?
In theory, reincarnation is possible under the laws of physics if you consider that, if you think the soul doesn't exist. In theory, it's possible that you will eventually reincarnate
Right.
if the universe repeats it often enough.
Mm. But will you be aware of that reincarnation?
Well, yes, that's my postulation, is that you will not only be consciousness and aware, but you will also have memories that will tell you that about your reincarnation.
Right.
So how does that make you feel as a non-religious person?
I mean, mostly fine. I don't see why that would be an issue.
No, I'm not saying. I'm not trying to. This is not a gotcha.
Hmm.
I'm genuinely thinking, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, assuming, so, like, I know so a lot of people are like, well, I don't believe in an afterlife just because, laws of physics,
Yeah.
but because I don't believe in the soul, or like things like that, which is a perfectly valid take, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to disparage anyone who has that belief, but if you were to learn that the laws of physics, in fact, do allow for, like, an afterlife of sorts,
Mm-hmm.
how what goes through your head when that occurs to you?
There's an element of not really being sure if it is genuinely possible, and if it is, then I don't know. I feel like it would be a lot more widely known.
Well, it's because it's obviously, this is the ravings of a madman, to put it lightly, because I'm not in any way an expert. It's just, consider it a thought experiment, and I'm
Yeah.
very curious as to why this thought experiment just isn't more common, because it is something that, like, is consistent with my understanding of the laws of physics.
Hmm.
I may be wrong, and I would love to hear why I'm wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm perfectly willing to accept that I'm wrong, and I would love to hear why I'm wrong, but it's something to think about, right? Like,
Hmm.
is like just the idea that the laws of physics are not necessarily antithetical to the concept of an afterlife.
Hmm.
It's just an interesting thing to think about for me personally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to you know uh say that the possibility of the universe repeating itself is impossible because, let's be frank, we just don't know. And there is evidence.
I will say that does seem to be the consensus theory. Like that is scientific consensus that if the heat death of the universe is the way that the universe ends, then the scientific consensus is that just by sheer law of large numbers, eventually the universe will repeat. That is a well accepted thing.
Yeah.
But go on.
I'm still not entirely sure how you think that if the universe and therefore people do repeat, how the person would ever find that sort of thing out, I guess.
Well, okay. So information in the brain is just how your memory is how your neurons are arranged in certain ways, right?
Right.
Like memory is a physical thing of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So by sheer law of large numbers, I'm not saying they would have memories, but consider the implantation of false memories. Because memories are a physical thing, in theory, you can you can implant false memories by simply physically manipulating the neurons of the brain.
Right.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes. Vaguely.
So if memory is a direct product of how the atoms in your brain are arranged, then by sheer random chance, it's possible for the atoms in a brain to be arranged just right to have an entire lifetime worth of memories, just by random chance. It is very unlikely, but it's one of those. But as we said, it's one of those things where, given a large enough sample size, it is more likely than not to happen.
At what point then do you question whether it is actually your own past memories or just, as you said, false memories that have never existed?
Well, I think you can never be sure in the moment, but for the purposes of our thought experiment, that's just the premise of the experiment.
Right.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Like in real time, you cannot be sure for certain, but for the purposes of our little thought experiment, yes, you will know, because that is the nature of the thought experiment. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So yes, so I think the biggest problem with this is that we do not understand consciousness. We don't know what consciousness is, like concretely.
Yeah.
And because we don't know what consciousness concretely is, we cannot really definitively say one way or another how consciousness would interact with this and if this is a thing that can happen. I'm just saying that if consciousness is just a product of how your brain's atoms are arranged, or not even necessarily your brain, right? Like if consciousness is a product of just how something of just like how some form of like particle physics happens in your brain,
Mm-hmm.
then in that case, you're like, well, I guess I'm alive now. And also, I somehow have these memories that are not necessarily real, but are not necessarily false either. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
It's obviously something that will never be fully provable
Mm-hmm.
unless it happens. Like, someone could just emerge and be like, well, I guess I have these memories now.
Mm.
Now, would anyone believe them? I believe in the moment, no. For obvious reasons. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone would actually believe this person.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm trying to say is that they wouldn't necessarily be wrong, and it's not necessarily impossible.
Mm.
Improbable? Yes, extremely so. Impossible? Not necessarily.
I mean, it's not impossible to prove. It would just be very difficult and rely on a lot of circumstances. Namely, the person with the past lives memory knowing a secret that only like one other person knows, and that person still being alive.
Oh, I hadn't even considered some ways to prove it. But yes, you're right. That would be one way of proving it.
Sorry, Evgeny,
Or just
you're going back. At least you better go back.
or just, like having very accurate predictions of the future.
Hmm.
Though again, butterfly effect and all that, so that's not necessarily a thing that could occur. But yes, what I'm saying is, and also you have to recall that said person would not necessarily. So the other thing about consciousness, right? Like, if you are you when the universe recurs,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't necessarily mean that you will be born in the same circumstances and life
Yeah.
as current, right? Like, that's also an important thing to consider, is that even if you could be, it's like that story we read on stream. Do you remember the egg? The story about the person who is every person in human history?
Vaguely.
Uh, but yes, you could be born as Mill, or you could also be born as a Chinese peasant girl in 5th century AD.
Hmm.
So, it's
I mean, there's also a case of knowledge there, isn't it? In that. Shut up, Nurse Salem. Salem, whatever. I'm doing my job here. If, for example, we go with the example you just gave of I'm a 6th century Chinese peasant girl who remembers her past life as a, fucking British guy.
a 21st century British guy, yes.
I don't know that much about 6th century China. So, what use I would be in 6th century China is not that much. Because I wouldn't have a fucking clue of what to do to, you know, necessarily improve things. I mean, I might be able to improve things for myself, but I would probably also get burned as a witch at some point.
Almost certainly, yes.
Though, they did like the magic angle back then. Maybe I could get away with that. Though again, I would probably be
Yes,
killed at some point.
yes, that's yeah. You could get yeah, because you could fashion yourself as some sort of sorcerer.
Alright, Maximov, get the car back in. But, yeah, I don't know if I could actually, you know, do much good in that sense, but yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, you might be able to survive. Yes.
Depending on the circumstances, yeah. Again, I think it would be a, dependent on circumstances thing.
As most things are.
You know, if I got dropped in the middle of a war somewhere, I probably wouldn't do that well. Why do you have a spoiler? Not the car.
But in general, like, how do you feel about the idea of an afterlife?
I am skeptical.
Well, obviously, but just like I'm talking more in the sense of how what if an afterlife does exist, how does that make you feel?
I mean, a little nervous in the sense of, again, what does that afterlife entail? I mean, we've been talking about afterlife as if you get to live life again, and considering I'm not overly enjoying current life, I'm not entirely sure whether I'd want to, go and do all this again. Especially considering the fact that it can only really get worse for me from here. In the sense that if I go further back in history, remembering, what I know now, that's not likely to go well for me.
It would be miserable, yes.
And let's be honest, things aren't going great at the moment, and not entirely sure I really want to go very far in the future.
Which is, again, a very logical and normal take.
So, assuming we talk about afterlife in a religious sense, I mean, even not being religious, I feel relatively confident of my ability to, reach a good afterlife. Certainly at this stage, anyway.
That also makes sense, yes.
I mean, obviously, it depends. Are the standards to get into heaven as as, high as Christians say it is.
I think most reasonably religious people are of the opinion that the sort of excessively high standards are more of a it's a bit complicated on the religious side. As someone who is religious, it is a bit complicated, but for the most part, people who sort of believe in the idea of a benevolent creator,
Mm-hmm.
at least the ones who think of it like from a more reasonable sort of point of view, like in the sense of they're like, okay, we hold certain uh truths. Like it's very hard to quantify what I'm trying to say, but what I'm essentially trying to say is that most people who believe in a benevolent creator believe that said creator, even if you do go to the bad place, there are opportunities to not suffer eternal damnation, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, basically, the idea is that most reasonable religious people seem to believe in the idea that the creator is benevolent and has, like, discretion of, like, uh, good discretion in that regard,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean that is also something to keep in mind of you only ever hear of, heaven and hell. And, you know, if the, uh requirements to get into heaven are so high, does that mean just, regular fucking Joe Schmoes who didn't really do anything wrong, but according to these, incredibly harsh standards, didn't do anything right either? Do they just go to hell?
This is why we. This is the logic behind the existence of purgatory, I suppose.
I'm not a dirty cop, sir. No, put that money away. Put it away. You're getting arrested.
Which I believe that is the premise of purgatory, is if
Mm.
you're like not a great like person, but you didn't like do anything excessively bad, you kind of just gotta serve your time in purgatory,
Mm.
until which point you can just after which you can just sort of go ascend to heaven and chill.
Mm. But again, what's involved in purgatory?
It's very unclear. Uh, uh, in some religions, it's like a waiting room, sort
Mm.
of, where you sort of just like have to spend a lot of time reflecting
Reflecting on the
on
fact
like.
that you've done nothing wrong, but you just haven't followed these, let's be honest, weird
Well,
and esoteric rules.
so that's another thing, is that most reasonably religious people are like, okay, the rules are more just general guidelines, and the core of it is don't be a dick and try to be good to people whenever you can.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so I think the average Joe Schmo, as you said, as long as they're not a horrible person, probably does get into the good place reasonably well. But it's like it's very ambiguous because a lot of this is going to be entirely dependent on the discretion and understanding of a being that, if you are religious, you believe is omnipotent and omniscient.
Hmm.
And as a consequence of that, an omnipotent and omniscient being, like, a lot of people don't, like, think of the implications of that.
Mm.
But some of the more, like, concrete implications of that are that you would very much sort of, like, know everything that happened and could possibly have happened. Right?
Yeah.
So, under that premise, knowing everything that did happen and could happen, you are essentially like uh, operating under the assumption, sort of, that there are going to be blind spots that you have that an omnipotent, omniscient creator will not. And that might change how things work out for you,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Do you get what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say?
Hmm.
Like,
I
it's possible that there are things you could have done better
mm,
that you didn't,
yeah.
and perhaps purgatory is a way of sort of examining those things.
But at that point, are you punishing people for not being perfect?
Well, no, it's not.
For only being
I think
human?
so. I think the idea, at least this is something that maybe comes up in. There's probably, like, this is something that comes up in Buddhism, I know, and it's probably something that you can apply to a decent number of religions. But the idea of a lot of afterlives, I think, is transcending your humanity, going from a flawed, only human sort of creature to a more perfect being.
Right.
So you can, in some ways, view something like purgatory as this sort of transitory process of going from being an imperfect being to a perfect being.
Right.
So so you may be thinking of it backwards. Like, rather than thinking of it as a punishment for not being perfect, it is rather a school or a set of instructions for how to become that, how to achieve perfection.
Mm.
Does it make sense if you think about it from that perspective?
Sort of, yeah. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. We've got an escapee.
How rude
Yeah.
of
Incredibly,
them to escape.
incredibly rude of them. Uh... Damn it! Some dude didn't move and I crashed into a tree. Oh, now you move! Fucking asshole.
tree crashing. Such things have been known to happen.
Yabba dabba do. I'm gaining. I'm gaining. I also think he's going towards the police base, which you'd hope that they'd help me.
I mean, there's some commentary there that I don't think this stream is appropriate for this stream, but I'm sure you know there's some things you could say in that regard.
What that Soviet era policemen in the Soviet Union and current day policemen in the West are about as corrupt as each other.
I would say yes, but also not a very the
Dude,
bar
you just
is
watch
in
it and
hell.
run away! Come here, come here. Gonna hatchet you.
Haze him.
Don't make me shoot you. Shot the last guy, I'll shoot you as well.
I've watched someone play this, and my only question is, does it? It's janky, right?
It can be janky, yeah.
My question is, does the level of jank extend to the point wherein it's does the level of jank extend to the point whereby if it doesn't have area detection, it just has hit detection, in which if you shoot someone, whether you shoot them in the leg or the head doesn't matter?
I don't remember. The fuck do you think you're going? Stop running away!
Basically, what I'm saying is, can you shoot them in the leg and hope for the best?
I mean, I shot that guy in the leg. Fat lot of good you were with your fucking AK-47s and your cigarettes. Pricks. Here I am, bringing a crim... Do you just honk me? Stop honking! People have no respect these days. No respect whatsoever. Anyway, what were we talking about?
The idea of purgatory being more of an educational or institution to achieve transcendence than prison. There's a lot of schools of thought, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Oh. Been shot at and I've gone the wrong way. Which means I gotta turn around back into the ambush. Well, I killed the transported prisoner.
Is that good or bad?
That's probably bad.
Just just say in the paperwork that he fell down some stairs.
I'll blame it on these guys. Oh, he's got some cocaine. I'm not gonna say no to some cocaine.
Try dissolving it in Coca-Cola as God intended.
I would argue there's also a question of what happens if you do go to, this theoretical afterlife? You get to, get to purgatory where you're told, hey, you need to be, educated so that you can be this transcendental being or whatever. And you go, well, I don't particularly want to be a, transcendent being. That doesn't sound like a reward for my, life done at not being a dick. Oh my god, why are there so many people trying to kill me? I'm just gonna ignore these ones. I've literally done nothing wrong. Mostly. I mean, I haven't been corrupt, is the thing.
Like in game or in real life?
In game. I've also not been corrupt in real life, but I would also argue I've not really been in a position where me being corrupt would matter.
Which is also fair.
Like, I have no power to be corrupt with.
Yeah, no, there is a... I think that's why so many people in, like, petty positions of power let it get to their head.
Mm.
You know the type of people I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
People who, in a little community group, think they are far more important than they are and end up being a complete dick about it.
Out of the vehicle, please, sir. You're watching the stream, right, Fuzzy?
Not consciously.
There's a wanted
Like,
poster
not...
here, and the dude in the poster has a full beard. This guy has, like, the Fu Manchu. I don't know. He makes me suspicious.
I mean, you could always arrest now and ask questions later.
Yeah, but I don't think that'd, go so well. He's also transporting radioactive materials, which I feel should be concerning.
You would think so.
Maybe this is before Chernobyl. I mean, it probably is. When was Chernobyl? 80s?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, this is 1979, so maybe people weren't as bothered about it.
I mean, I think rather than an issue of bothered or not bothered, I think it might be more of an awareness thing.
Mm.
But yeah, I do feel like so I have mixed feelings on, and I know how this is going to sound. I have mixed feelings on Chernobyl. Let me tell you what I mean.
Right.
It was a great tragedy, of that there is no doubt.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that is just one of those that's self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
Chernobyl was a tragedy that really, like, was not good for anyone involved. I will never dispute that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say, however, is that it had some very unfortunate effects in the sense that it had the effect of, like, causing a great deal of, like, fear over nuclear power.
Yeah. It caused a wave of paranoia that, nuclear power has not really recovered from.
Yes, and I think and that is
which may or may not be a mistake.
it is not great in the sense that it is like nuclear power is not real. It's like it's very good in general.
Hmm.
And just because that one incident there have been other meltdowns, though nothing quite as like cataclysmic as Chernobyl.
Yeah.
But just because those meltdowns can happen and have happened does not mean and should not mean that you like sort of it's a throwing the baby out with the bathwater situation, I think.
Hmm.
Is what I'm trying to say. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
In that it's like it's very much a case where uh Chernobyl is the worst is sort of like as close as you can get to the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't necessarily base our entire like
It's not full worst case scenario because obviously, there could have been a significant chunk worse. But yes, I understand what you mean there.
yes, it's like we shouldn't base our entire body of policy on that alone,
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to say. And because it has sort of come to that, it's just a very unfortunate consequence. Like the unfortunate consequence of this is that because it has sort of come to that, it will be very difficult to convince people to widely adopt nuclear power, which is basically the greenest form of electricity. Not only is it green, it's also just the most like consistent, reliable, and generally like usable form of renewable, like clean energy.
Yeah.
It is like far and away better than the vast majority of the alternatives, and it is like kind of unfortunate
Mm.
that it has reached a point where the paranoia is preventing its widespread adoption.
Yeah.
Obviously, well, the paranoia is probably also a result partially of like lobbying by you know
Out of the car.
the wealthy.
Out of the car. Out of the fucking car. You apparently should be returned, so out of the fucking car. Fine. Go. I don't care. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, there's also an element of, how much do you think that lobbying against, nuclear power has come from, fossil fuel
The oil. Yes, yes, no, that's what I was implying.
industries?
Yes, that is exactly what I was implying. That is mainly who has been lobbying against nuclear power because it's like it's basically the only thing that realistically is a realistic replacement for fossil fuels.
Mm.
Because like with like solar and wind and stuff, we just do not have the technology yet. It's constantly improving, right? Like the
Mm.
solar panels of today are miles more efficient than the solar panels of like even 20 years ago. But it is like it's a gradual process, and at the present it just can't keep up, like supply can't keep up with demand
Yeah.
because of just how vital electricity is for like obvious reasons. Because supply can't keep up with demand, it just ends up being a case of, well, look, this isn't work. Like it's very easy to cite that, oh, look, this isn't working, so obviously we have to do something else.
Yeah.
So, it's a whole thing.
Yeah. Somebody's trying to bring counterfeit money into the country. Wow.
Wow.
Puts you in a bit of a pickle, sir. Really puts you in a bit of a pickle. Sorry, I just got to do something real quick. Okay. Yeah, I don't see this going well for you, sir. In the sense of, you're definitely going to jail. You are definitely going to jail. Alright. Take you and your fucking chin strap beard right to jail. We've been promoted.
Wonderful news.
It's a glorious day, comrade.
Uh, so yeah, I could probably start a cult off of the quantum reincarnation thing, couldn't I?
We're under attack. From where I don't know. There.
This game has a lot more combat than I expected.
The damn capitalists are after us.
Yep, I'm sure that's exactly who it is. It's after you.
I mean, who else would it be?
I mean... Actually, that's a good question. How active was
Something just
Chinese
exploded.
espionage in 1979?
Not sure.
I suppose the full tripartite hadn't quite occurred yet, though, at the time. Was that sort of thing in your purview when you were studying history?
We did not cover China very much. At least not unless you studied the Chinese modules, which I think there was at least one of them. But I didn't.
Yeah, I ask because it's like it's within your the range you have stated. So
I don't remember doing anything particularly Chinese focused. I did do a Cold War module, but I don't remember China getting mentioned. It'd be a thing I'd have to go and check, basically.
because yeah, it was like it wasn't quite like the biggest power,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like the signs were there starting to appear.
Yeah.
There was shaping up to be a reasonably significant superpower.
I mean, okay, I tell a lie to a certain extent. China was mentioned, but it was never a huge point of focus.
Well, obviously, yeah, no, I get what you mean.
It was more in the sense of, um, okay, where am I going here? Ah, labor camp. Right. So right, and then follow the road. Okay. It was always in the context of, you know, America or the Soviet Union sort of thing, rather than them in their own right. What effect their actions were having on, you know, what Russia was, on what the Soviet Union was trying to do. So I would not feel confident talking about China in the 70s, certainly. You also have to remember they were going through, certainly at some point in the 70s, I'm fairly sure, they were going through some shit of their own.
Yeah, there was some stuff happening that was not necessarily the most positive occurrences in the world.
Great step forward. There happened to be a great step forward over a lot of corpses.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very much a time and a place to be alive in many ways.
When did Tiananmen Square not happen?
89, I believe.
Mm.
Or 83, 83.
83.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least as far as I can remember.
Yeah.
Won't be too far off.
Like I said, Chinese history is not one that I've hugely focused on.
Which again is understandable. You can't like you can't focus
on everything now.
Yeah. Especially at the bachelor's level, you kind of have to split your focus. Right? It's just not feasible to like
Yeah.
do too much at the bachelor's level.
Mm-hmm. I think there was. I feel like I remember getting a week of lectures about China, but in the context of the British Empire, because obviously we had that whole opium thing.
Oh yeah, the Boxer Rebellion and all that.
Iris, what?
So does that mean that, like with everything else, England is responsible for the opioid epidemic?
Probably. Look, you look deep enough, and Britain's probably at fault for something or other.
That does seem to be the general consensus, yes.
I mean, look, if it's not the British, it's the Americans. If it's not the Americans, it's probably the French or the Germans. And if it's not the French or the Germans, it is 100% the Belgians. The Belgians fucking sucked. Like, they they get something of a pass for some reason. People don't seem to think that the Belgians could possibly have done anything wrong. Uh, the Belgians fucked the Congo hard.
I think it's less people thinking that the Belgians couldn't have done anything wrong and more just a general lack of knowledge of like that, like, because it's
Mm.
like there was a lot of stuff going on in a lot of parts of the world
Yeah,
that were not immediately known to people. So it's like it's at least somewhat understandable.
yeah. But yeah, for people who aren't aware, Belgians really, really bad in the Congo. Like chopping hands and feet off bad, if I remember correctly.
Ooh, that is not a good look. Not a good look at all.
I mean, they also did the typical colonialist thing of basically letting go of their colony in the shittiest and pettiest way possible. And
Which, of course they
yeah,
did.
you know, basically leaving without, putting into place any sort of infrastructure, and therefore leaving a power vacuum, which is generally very bad.
Power vacuums are not pleasant by any like they're not great for anyone involved,
Mm.
really.
I'm trying to think. I don't quote me on this 100%, but I seem to recall they also oh, that's because I just didn't write it down. Um, I seem to recall they also may have like made a deal with somebody basically going like, "Hey, I can see you need some help. If you give us this right to the fucking mines, we'll help you out." So yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I do not have the highest opinion of Belgium in that sense. But then again,
But yeah.
it's not like the British did much better. I mean, look at fucking India and Pakistan.
And of course the one that everyone forgets, Bangladesh.
Hmm.
It's so yeah, I think the core issue with a lot of the world is that colonialism happened.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's something that is known, but the fact that it's
You just
a
killed one of
topic
my
of
guards! You piece of shit!
how rude.
You just ran him over! You okay? He's not okay. Right, I'm just gonna, well, he just disappeared into the void. Well, we're down a border guard. Great. Sure, the government will get right on replacing him. But yeah, colonialism real bad.
Which I hope that's not a controversial take.
You'd think you wouldn't think so, would you? But I remember being shown the views of a particular historian who was basically like, no, the British Empire was nothing but good for the countries it colonized. Yeah.
I mean, we must sadly acknowledge the fact that there is no shortage of idiots in the world.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember his name 100%. It's Nile something, I think.
But yeah, it's one of those things that you will never fully. You can never really stop looking at the consequences because it was such a wide reaching thing that you just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
every day you could discover a new thing, which is like, oh yeah, this is also a consequence of colonialism, huh?
Yeah.
Which is not great.
No.
But yeah, I will say that on a slightly less depressing topic, at least we have frogs.
For now.
Frogs are one of those things that are sort of unlikely to fully go extinct
Mm.
because there's just like so many of them and so many different kinds. They're like pretty resilient, so frogs are likely to outlast humanity.
Get the fuck back in your car and get out of my country. See the shit state of this vehicle? We're not allowing that in our country. Trying to run over a border guard. Like the last guy. Whatever. I'm not doing too well, to be brutally honest. It's been a while since I played the game.
Yeah, no, it's gameplay is not necessarily what we're here for.
Oh, hang on a second. Out of the fucking car. You're going to jail, buddy.
You get so aggressive when playing this game.
Well, you think 1979 fucking Soviet Union border guard wouldn't be?
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like I applaud the commitment to the character.
Especially considering, we had that one guy who I was like, is this him? Did he just shave part of his beard off?
I will say though,
And then I shot his tire out unnecessarily.
I feel like there are certain professions, and I believe border guards are one of them, wherein there's probably like a chunk of them are like, as you said, aggressive and sort of like there for the love of the game, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But there's probably also a chunk of them that are kind of just like phoning it in.
Yeah.
Right? This is their 9 to 5. They're just kind of like don't really care much.
I mean, as
Yeah, and I
as
just
always, it depends on circumstances. This is the this is a fake Soviet Union in the late 70s. You don't do your job here, you tend to get shot.
well, yes and no, because like among the rank and file, it is essentially just a roll of the dice, right?
Well, maybe not shot, but you'd certainly get sent to some labor camp.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is that like for these like super like for the grunt work stuff
Mm.
is that they just don't have a feasible way of keeping track of everyone.
Yeah.
So basically, you just have to hope that you don't get randomly picked to be made an example of,
Mm.
right? Like it sucks. Like there's no getting around that. It's just that it's not necessarily like it's one of those things where what you do doesn't necessarily matter in this scenario.
Mm.
Because like, well, they could do a thing,
Mm.
but it's like all luck of the draw.
Yeah. I mean, this I'm doing basically like endless mode to a certain extent, or free play mode.
Mm.
There is a story to this where you can side with like the rebels, and that
It's
basically,
it's like Papers, Please in that regard, I
yeah,
suppose.
and
Papers, Please
basic
was go ahead.
and basically go even though you've got all this shit, you can come in, and obviously if you do it enough, you get picked up on it.
It's in hindsight, Papers, Please was really something of a landmark, wasn't it?
Hmm.
Because like it's one of those things where you're like, oh wow, that's so creative, and why did it, and it's one of those things where it seems very simple to like think about in concept and like do, but
Hmm.
if but most people just never think of it, so the first person to think of it is in fact something of a pioneer.
Yeah.
Because like yeah, Papers, Please is the very creative, like interesting and creative concept that is not necessarily difficult to think of, but it's just that no one thought of it before the person who made it did. So it's like, well,
um I'd also argued that Oberdin probably helped in that respect as well.
oh yeah, Return of the Oberdin is another one that was like very creative and just it was one of those things where it's just like, huh, you can do this. This is
Yeah.
a thing you can do, and it just never really occurs to people.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a what I'm saying is hindsight is 2020, and it I do admit that I'm sometimes envious in hindsight.
Mm.
because people just are able to come up with these things.
Yeah. But it is what it is. I mean, hey, maybe they have a, fucking memories of a past life.
uh, I will say, while it's an interesting thought experiment, it's obviously not something that is. Well, it's not that it's not concretely not provable. It's more one of those things where we just don't know enough about how certain things work
Mm-hmm.
to have a definitive answer one way or another
Yeah.
regarding this. But it is just one of those things that always gets me, the fact that we just don't know how consciousness works.
Yeah.
That's literally, it is the fundamental everything, like the fundamental focus of our existence, and we just don't know how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just does.
Yeah.
It's wild. Though yes, I think about that a lot. I also think about other stuff like just how concretely incomprehensible uh the uh the traditional monotheistic omnipotent deity is. Do you know what I mean by that?
Uh, explain anyway.
Well, no, it's that, like, we as humans, right? Like, we are human, allegedly. I'm definitely not uh duck with a knife piloting a skin suit a la Vincent D'Onofrio.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Um, but we are human.
Yeah.
And that comes with, like, a lot of plus sides, but we have to acknowledge that even though we are the smartest things on the planet that we know of, the jury is still out on the whole mycelium network supercomputer, which again, that I'll talk about in a bit. We are the smartest things on the planet, but we are smart enough to see just how limited we are
Mm-hmm.
in our understanding of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Uh, so yes, we're smart, but we're not like, it's not to the level of being able to truly conceptualize and understand eldritch horrors beyond our comprehension. And that is what a an omnipotent monotheistic deity is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It is like, just the concept of it is so far beyond anything we know and understand, we can possibly know and understand.
Mm.
Because it's like, it's I don't know. It's one of those things where it's hard to word just how out of our depth we are when even talking about something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's like we cannot really conceptualize. Like hell, we can't even like visualize anything beyond 3 dimensions. Whereas a being like that would require a lot more than just visualizing in 3 dimensions. It would require like actively visualizing like a theoretically infinite number of dimensions. So it's not like we are anywhere even close to that.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Cool.
it's something.
You know exactly what I'm doing, dude. Hiding
So yes,
weapons in the wheel, Alim. For shame. What else you got? Well, you got a box with drugs on it. Admittedly, they're meant to be medical drugs, but I don't know if I trust you.
I mean, medical drugs are just recreational waiting to happen.
Hmm.
And vice versa, really. Like, if the recent research into stuff like psilocybin and MDMA have taught us anything.
Mm-hmm. Alright, well, you're going to jail regardless. Get rid of it, Maximov. Good lad. Okay, I missed a lot of the contraband. Oh well.
Which is unfortunate because I'm pretty sure the
It gives...
premise of the game is not doing that.
Yeah, it gives me money. But hey, I caught him anyway, so it's fine. Another car, mate. Hope you're not trying to smuggle anything in. Last guy was, and it didn't end well for him. Dari Mushyam. All seems to be in check for now. Oh yeah, Fuzzy, I finished Near Automata recently on last
Like for the
Tuesday.
first time, or
No, second time.
hmm. Yeah, it's. Oh, did you go to the place I told you for the true ending epilogue thing?
I did, yes.
How did you feel about that? Okay, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. How did you feel about that?
Um, I mean, relatively happy to know that, you know, Nines and 2B are still existing in some shape or form.
I mean, like the implication is that they lived happily ever after, which is
Yeah.
just it's very much an earn your happy ending sort of story, isn't it?
They go through a lot of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, on the plus side, at least they. But yeah, no. What I was gonna say is like, it's one of the things that I saw on that, like in my deep dive on like the some of the Near Automata stuff is that if you think like it's the realization that, oh, hang on a second, the cover of the game takes place after after the game's ending,
Hmm.
which is very interesting to me. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the implication. Is that the cover with like 2B holding what appears to be a dead and or unconscious 9S is essentially the epilogue of the game. Which, if you go by that interpretation, even though she's not mentioned in that final farewell epilogue, the implication is that A2 is just chilling.
Hmm.
Which is nice.
Yeah. Again, another character that very much deserves her happy ending.
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
So, do you think it ended in a throuple?
Probably not. I think
Why?
there are too many bad feelings between A2 and 9S, and some confusing stuff given how many of 2B's memories A2 has.
So what you're saying is there's a chance.
I mean, there's always a chance. Far be it from me to turn down a throuple ending in anything. They should absolutely happen more often.
I.e. at all. Because they really don't, do they?
Yeah.
Can you think of a single thing where a throuple or polycule ending actually happened? That's not like a harem series, because harem is kind of its own thing that Yeah.
I mean,
It's like,
not off the top of my head.
yeah, because harems are the closest thing you get to polycules.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, that's not what they are.
Yeah.
Really. So yeah, it's a very
You know what,
interesting.
I'm just gonna say, no, you can't come in. Because you got a cow. Try it, buddy. I got a 12 gauge pointed at you. See what happens. I got room in my jail cell for one more person. Right, take your tink toy and go home. Okay. I'm not going to start another day because we're basically near the end of the stream.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're approaching that. But yeah, Nier is like
It's a really
a
interesting
great,
series, and it's one that I deeply, deeply love.
with good reason. It's like it's a great series.
I mean, put it this way, I'm planning on watching the anime with my mum.
So I'm not going to stop you, but I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing that, considering some of the things.
Such as...
Mostly the horny stuff.
There's not that much horny stuff, really.
And the anime?
I mean, I would argue not in the game either.
Well, yes and no, right? Because it's like Yes, there's not a lot of like overtly horny stuff in the series proper,
Hmm.
but like the game it's a very horny game in
It is.
general.
It can be, yes. I would argue that the horniness is mostly at the player's discretion. I mean, there's a reason there's a fucking achievement for looking up 2B's skirt 10 times. Oh, buddy, you've
Yeah.
crashed into me at the wrong fucking time. Why does it seem like there's always somebody trying to kill me?
Because chances are there is.
Mm. But yeah, I would argue that certainly the anime is relatively low on the horny scale. It's not like perfect. There's definitely moments of upskirt shots for 2B. And obviously A2 is rather skimpily clad. But I would argue it's no worse than, say, Dr. Stone, which I've watched with my mum anyway.
Fair enough. I just
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I get it,
it's
but
one of the yeah.
I would also
I think
I would also
Go
say
ahead.
that I think the quality of the writing and characters is enough to offset it in my mind.
Yeah, I think for me, I think my mother is just much more prudish.
Hmm.
Like, I think like the level of something, which okay, this is a series that I half feel bad for liking now.
Mm-hmm.
But one of basically the thing that probably my mom enjoyed watching most with me was the Amazon Prime Good Omens adaptation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like, so the good thing is that Terry Pratchett remains a saint.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's good, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's not an unsalvageable series simply because half the authorship was a good person, I
Yeah.
think, at least. God, that was one of the most depressing things to learn about recently.
I just don't understand why it feels like people are such fucking incapable of being not shitheads. Like at this
It
point, I don't even.
really isn't
I don't.
that hard.
Yeah, I don't even care if you're not like fucking donating to charity or some shit like that, and like being an actively good person. As long as you're not a fucking shithead, I'm willing to look
As long
the
as you're
other
not an
way to a
actively
certain
bad
extent. Yeah,
person.
like as long as you're not actively being a shithead. But just so many of them seem fucking capable of it. To be fair, I also was not aware that the person in question, let's say, was raised as a Scientologist.
Oh, wow. Now that is
Because
Scientology even that old?
apparently
Isn't the
so.
person in question like quite old?
It apparently is. Like, their dad
He
was.
must have been in like the first or second generation
I think
then.
so, yeah.
Yeah, because like L. Ron Hubbard was he was kicking around and he was writing about Xenu in like the 50s.
But yeah, apparently the guy's dad was quite a high ranking member as well. So.
Okay, now so that makes a lot of things make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it doesn't excuse anything, not by any stretch of the imagination, but some things make sense
Mm-hmm.
given that information.
Yeah. But yeah, the guy sucks, unfortunately. Um, Going back to Nier for a second, I've also bought. So there's like a collection of short stories for it, and I've bought that.
Mm, yes.
So that should arrive tomorrow, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it's like we do need to do a proper like chat about Nier
Hmm.
at some point.
Um, if nothing else, I think Jack needs to play it still, which
I
Jack
mean,
is.
that depends on how much interest he actually has.
I know he is interested in playing it because he said that's why he wasn't going to watch the anime.
Hmm, fair enough. Though, if we do wait for Jack, it might be a long time coming before we can actually talk about
Yeah,
it.
I mean
It
to
might have.
be
I
to
think.
be very fair, the game isn't even that long because I finished it in 30 something hours, which feels a bit sad to say not that long to 30 something hours, but still.
I mean, by the standards of like a sprawling
JRPG, yeah.
story-based JRPG, it really isn't that long.
I mean that's the other thing. I did it in like 15, 16 streams worth. A couple of them went
Yeah.
longer than 2 hours, but I completed main five endings. I got some of the other endings, and I completed like 80 to 90% of the side quests as well. So, like, at some point, I am gonna do one last stream to basically see if I can mop up those last few side quests and see if I can get some of the more interesting other endings.
Which, yeah, but it's like it really isn't that. Or
I
rather,
mean,
it's
compare it to because so Nier was one of the first JRPGs I remember really playing. Um, and I played that alongside. I played it. Well, I played it after Final Fantasy 15, and I played it basically alongside base P5. You compare it in terms of length to those two, and Jesus Christ, there is a difference.
an almost like it's an incredible difference, right? Like it's
Mm,
like an almost incomprehensible distance.
yeah. And I mean, let me just make this very clear. Nier was my favorite out of the three of them, by far.
That is understandable. I think I agree. Though I think also that an argument could be made for P5. P5
P5
is a really good game.
P5
I
P5
don't
is a
think it's
really
as
good
good.
game. I mean, I would argue that obviously because of changes made in terms of gameplay and the addition of the third semester, Royal is better. So I would be more comparing Royal to Nier.
Well, yes,
Um,
that's the idea. Yeah,
yeah,
compare the most complete versions, obviously.
but I would also argue that Persona as a franchise has significant problems, and P5 is, I would argue, quite a microcosm of them. Um,
Yes.
in that obviously fucking Atlas are dinosaurs in terms of social issues. Um, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
P5 is built on social issues. So there is sort of an undercutting of aspects of the game in that respect. So I mean, hey, if fucking P5 had let me have at the very least a gay ending, if not, in Royal a thruple ending, then maybe I could, make some good arguments there. But I just overall like think that.
You know what's really wild to me is that there isn't a mod to make there isn't a mod for it polycules or a harem ending in for Persona
Mm,
5. Which is one of those things that you'd think
yeah,
they would do.
I feel like mechanically wise, it would be difficult to do. Um, I mean, mechanically wise, it's difficult for the actual game developers to do. Especially if you want to
How so?
Okay, maybe not mechanically, but overall, I mean,
Thematically, maybe.
thematically maybe, but there's an element of. I mean, Persona would be easier to do it because obviously there are parts of it where you don't have to worry about voice lines. Um, but for example, Veilguard, the developers did consider adding, a
Polyamory.
polyamory to the game, but realized in terms of it would just be too difficult to do in terms of both the work to implement it, but also doing so respectfully, doing so properly, rather than
Well,
it.
my caveat here is that modders don't care about that. They're just horny for the most part.
Fair, fair.
So I'm what I mean by it's surprising is simply that it is somewhat surprising to me that modders didn't just decide to be like, "Hey, I want to just remove the Valentine's Day scene
Mm,
where you and just make it so you can pick
mm.
one." Like remove the discovery scene if you romance multiple people.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't know particularly what goes into modding and how easy or hard something may or may not be, so I don't fucking know. But I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, we should
Based on my Okay, yes, we should end. Yeah.
should probably call it a day here. So thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed. In terms of future stuff, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursday I might have the night off, which is always nice to have the occasional night off. Because I
Well, I'm almost certain because this Thursday we will, as far as we can tell, unless something goes horribly wrong, will be a Sanderson Cosmere book tier list.
hmm
Featuring at the very minimum, it's going to feature Gen and Jack, and I may or may not be there depending on circumstances.
I know Jack definitely wants to get you in there just for obviously you have you know
I have
you
strong
you
opinions.
have opinions about the series, so and they differ a fair amount from Jack and Gen. Um, Not that I think
I
Jack and
have
I don't think Jack and Gen would pick the exact same things, but it's always nice getting a wild card in there.
It's one of those things where Jack and Gen, bless their hearts, are probably going to be accommodating of my opinions, but at the same time will likely be uh, questioning their life choices to a certain extent. When being forced to listen to me,
Mhm.
so it is going to be a fun time, one way or another.
Yeah, Otherwise, again, thank you for watching. Please do give us a follow here on Twitch and all that YouTube stuff.
Like, subscribe, leave a comment if you enjoyed the video, and click that bell icon if you want more notifications in the future.
And otherwise, hopefully, we shall see you on Thursday. Good night.
Bye bye.